Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll pick up where you left off on forced labor. Do you know of any place in our history in which, except in time of war, when things are commandeered and people are told do that, or when police are in hot pursuit, do you know a time in which people were forced to apply their inventive genius against their will?
Congressman, I'm not aware of it. The steel cases during the war are the ones that were the most applicable.
Sure, and I certainly understand a different time and a different set of circumstances. Now, I want to do two things. So, Ms. Landau, I'm going to come to you first. Your expertise is encryption. You were probably very young, but you remember 20 years ago the argument, wasn't it the FBI and then the late Mike Oxley and others that were championing that if we allowed more than 256-bit encryption, then the FBI couldn't easily decode it, and that would be the ruin of their investigations.
Right, and what you get instead is over the last 20 years, the NSA has increasingly supported the secure technologies for private sector communications infrastructure, including the 256-bit algorithm.
Okay, I'm going to ask a quick question, and it's old technology, because I'm very good with analog world, but this happens to be a January 29, 2015 patent that's already in the record, and it's a patent on basically self-destructing the contents inside if someone tries to forcibly open it. Now, the funny thing is I was looking for the old patents going back decades and decades because the military and others have used these. They've had acids and even more punitive, if you will, responses inside when we wanted to secure it. It's not a new technology, but there's a new twist on it. Aren't we, in a sense, the equivalent of saying, well, you can make something that destroys the documents, but then you have to tell us how to defeat it?
That's exactly right.
Okay, and I'm looking and saying that there's no history in that, but we've had plain safes for a very, very long time. This isn't new. Do you know of any shredder company that's been told that they have to show you how to reassemble what they've shredded?
I don't study shredding companies, but I'd be very surprised if there were.
Mr. Vance, have you ever ordered a shredding company to put the paper back together, use their inventive genius?
Of course I haven't, Congressman.
Okay, you're asking in this case for somebody to create a product for your service, and I want to focus on that, and I'll get to you, I promise. But Mr. Swallow, I'm going to look at you as the representative of one of the great technology companies in our country. Apple gets its great technology people, I assume, from Stanford and MIT and other great universities, right?
We do, yes indeed.
And you don't get all the graduates, right?
No, we don't. We wish we did.
So when I was talking to the director and saying, well, if you take, and it's a hypothetical, my level of knowledge is way less than any of your folks and probably any of the FBI's, but if you take this hard drive, solid-state hard drive, you pull it apart, and he even used the word mirroring. Obviously, he'd had some discussion at some point, and you make as many images as you want, then you have a true original that even if the self-destruct occurs, that original, you throw it away, you take another one. So that part of what he's asking you to do, they can do themselves by pulling the chip out and having it imaged, if you will, in all likelihood. We're not saying for sure, but he hadn't checked it. So that's a possibility. Is that right?
I believe so. We don't know what the condition of the phone is, and we don't know what the condition of the RAM is.
And of course, we're not really talking about one phone. We know that. We're talking about thousands of phones. And as I understand the technology used in your chip is you have burnable traces in your chip. So randomly or in some way, when you're producing each chip, you burn traces which create the encryption algorithm, and it's internal. So the chip has its algorithm separate from the software. But that chip, when interfacing with an image, if you keep giving it new images, that's the part that changes. So isn't it at least conceivable that as to that phone, and perhaps the 175 in New York and others, that the FBI or the NSA could in fact come up with a elegant brute force attack that would work on your phones and also would work on hundreds of other types of phones around the world, and that technology with, if you will, those brilliant young minds from Stanford, MIT, and Kent State, my alma mater, could in fact produce something that would not be available to the public, they would have control over, and they would be able to make it more universal than just trying to go through your source code, which I understand, is it correct, they've never asked for, is that right?
We've never been asked for our source code.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if anyone else wants to opine on it, I would appreciate they be able to.